Just a few weeks ago, I considered myself the most fortunate individual on earth, not in a spiritual sense, but in a tangible, everyday way. Life was genuinely good. While I wasn't as affluent as someone like Bill Gates, I was successfully managing my father's manufacturing enterprise, and it was thriving. All my financial obligations were met, and profits were consistently reinvested back into the business. My long-term vision was to eventually retire with a substantial financial cushion. This practice of reinvesting stemmed directly from my father's teachings. He never drew a formal salary, which meant that when he divorced his second wife, she received nothing from him. At the time, I didn't give it much thought. He was a notorious womanizer throughout his life. I, however, was the opposite. I was devoted to my family. My wife and daughter were my entire world, or rather, they were. Now the pride I once felt for them feels like a bitter curse. I find myself replaying every cherished memory with Lori and Katie, desperately searching for any overlooked signs, any indication of betrayal. It was even Katie, my own daughter, who ultimately shattered my world. The unraveling began one Friday afternoon. I was out front mowing the lawn early to prepare my prized 2009 Mustang GT, which was meticulously cleaned and stored away for an upcoming car show. Katie arrived home, gave me a brief hug, and then went to speak with her mother on the patio. I would occasionally glance over, anticipating another request for money, but their conversation was unusually intense. They didn't seem to notice me approaching until I overheard a few words that struck me like a physical blow. "Catherine, how could you be so foolish?" Lori's voice cut through the air. "Come on, Mom," Katie pleaded. "It was just once." "It wasn't even that different," Katie continued, her voice tinged with a desperate excitement. "Just more thrilling. I'm not leaving Eric. He's just kind of dull sometimes. He's your husband, Katie. He loves you. If you're bored, work on that. I can't believe you're doing this." I immediately shut off the mower. They both turned, startled, and saw me. Lori's expression was one of sheer fury. Katie looked utterly defensive. "Mark, please talk some sense into your daughter," Lori demanded. "She went to a party, got intoxicated, and ended up sleeping with some stranger while Eric was at work." "Wow, Mom, why don't you just announce it to the entire neighborhood?" Katie retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Then she turned her venomous gaze towards me. "You and Dad are still together." That statement landed with devastating force. Lori's jaw dropped as she witnessed my reaction. "It was only once," Katie pressed on, "and I was drunk." She paused. "I wanted to try it again, sober. It's not like I'm having a full-blown affair like you did, and Dad forgave you, didn't he? Maybe Eric will too." Lori's face turned ashen. "Mom, are you all right?" Katie asked, her anger suddenly dissipating as she looked at me and finally perceived the raw pain in my eyes. Lori took a step towards me. "Mark, I am truly sorry. I really am." "Don't come near me," I stated, my voice chillingly cold. "What's going on?" Katie inquired, a look of genuine confusion on her face. Then her eyes widened as she turned back to me. "You didn't know. She told me you did." I met Katie's gaze, locking eyes with her. "Burn this image into your memory," I instructed, my voice firm. "Because that is precisely how Eric will look when he discovers the truth. And you need to tell him tonight." Her expression tightened. "Dad, if it's going to hurt him like this, I can't tell him." "Then you will lose him," I warned. "Because if he hears it from someone else like me, it will hurt him even more. I might even contact him myself and suggest we split the legal fees." Her eyes widened further. "Why would he need a lawyer?" "Perhaps he'll want a divorce too," I replied. Mark, you are upset, Lori said softly from across the room. Damn right I'm upset, I snapped, turning my attention back to her. I treated you like royalty. Name one thing I didn't provide for you, and now I find out I'm married to a cheater, and my own daughter is following your example. I know I hurt you, Mark, Lori murmured. Oh, so you realize I feel like a complete fool, I retorted, my voice cracking with emotion. I've boasted about my family for years. You were my entire motivation for working so hard. A heavy silence descended upon the room. Not anymore, I declared, my tone now decidedly cooler. I've learned how to move on. That particular skill is going to prove quite useful. I looked directly into Lori's eyes. Who was he? She hesitated, tears welling up. What difference does it make? It makes a difference to me. I want to know. What are you going to do? I'm going to find him, I stated, and I'm going to destroy him. Mark, he's married as well, she whispered. They're not doing well. They have problems, and we don't, I countered, my voice sharp. Both women flinched back, likely anticipating a physical outburst. Frankly, they weren't far off. I'm heading to the Mustang Memories show tomorrow, I announced, attempting to regain my composure. Lori nodded. I know, honey. I'll accompany you. We can talk on the drive. No, you are not coming, I stated flatly. I am not like my father. What does that have to do with anything? She asked. Do not call me honey. Call me Mark, I instructed, my voice sharp. My father pursued women he shouldn't have. I do not surround myself with people who betray me. We are not going anywhere together. The next time we interact, it will be in a courtroom. Mark, please, Lori sobbed. I said, I am sorry. Can we not talk? I am sorry, Lori, she whispered. Sorry does not fix this, I snapped, my voice cutting. And this is the only conversation we are going to have. She stepped closer. Mark, if we don't talk, how can we possibly mend this? I raised a hand to stop her. If you utter the word sorry one more time, I swear I will completely lose it. Our neighbors have undoubtedly already heard how sorry you are. They certainly heard enough, but we are finished. I turned away, my decision final and unwavering. After the show, I will be initiating divorce proceedings. Be gone by the time I return. No, Lori cried. Mark, I love you. I do not want a divorce. And I did not want to be married to a liar, I shot back. But here we are. Tears streamed down her face. We can work through this, she pleaded. I already extended that opportunity to you, I replied coldly. When I asked you who he was and you remained silent, you made your choice. You protected him, not our marriage. But she started, Lori insisted desperately. No, I interrupted. You cared more about his marriage than your own. That was your mistake. I will sue him for the dissolution of ours, and I will ensure his wife testifies. If she cannot afford legal representation, I will cover all expenses myself. She stared at me, utterly stunned, as if she no longer recognized the man standing before her. Perhaps she didn't, because I was no longer the same person. I am going to finish the yard work, I stated, heading for the door. Then I am checking into a hotel after the show. I expect you to be gone. Mark, please, she whimpered as I restarted the mower. I paused it just long enough to look at Katie. Catherine, tell Eric that if you don't, I will. Then I reactivated the mower and returned to my task. As I circled the property, the surreal nature of the entire situation began to sink in. I felt as though I were losing my mind, mowing the lawn, preparing for a car show. None of it was an act of denial. It was simply the only way I could maintain a semblance of normalcy. I needed routine to prevent myself from completely unraveling. Lori and Katie continued their argument on the patio as I worked. Eventually, Katie stormed off in a huff. Lori remained seated, silently observing me. Every time I passed, she appeared on the verge of speaking. I deliberately ignored her. Upon finishing, I parked the mower and proceeded upstairs to pack. "Mark, can we talk?" she asked quietly. I paused and turned to face her. "What are you doing?" she inquired. "Just taking one last look at my home with you still in it," I responded. "We can fix this," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "Only if both individuals are willing to try, and I am done." Our home in Ohio was approximately 90 minutes away from Detroit, where the significant automotive exhibition at Ford headquarters was scheduled to take place. This was not merely a Mustang-centric event, it was a comprehensive showcase. It seemed like precisely the kind of distraction I desperately needed. Perhaps I might even linger for the NASCAR race. One thing was undeniably clear. I would have considerably more free time from this point forward. All the sacrifices I had made for my family now seemed entirely insignificant. As I drove, my thoughts drifted back to the evening I first met Lori in college. It was a crowded party. I spotted her across the room, her jet black hair cascading around her, her blue eyes captivating. She was holding hands with some imposing fellow who barely seemed to acknowledge her presence. Then he vanished into the crowd, and I seized the opportunity. I approached her and offered her a cold beer. "I don't drink," she stated, eyeing the bottle skeptically. "Excellent," I replied with a slight smile. She tilted her head. "Why is that excellent?" "Because I don't either," I said, revealing a second bottle. "But I suspect I'll need both of these." She regarded me with a curious look, then broke into a bright, disarmingly charming smile. "If you don't drink, why bring two?" "To help calm my nerves," I admitted, chuckling softly. "What could possibly be making you nervous?" I asked. "Standing next to the most beautiful woman on the planet," I said without hesitation. Her smile deepened, but her voice took on a wistful tone. "Too bad not everyone shares that opinion, and you won't be here long." "I'll stay as long as you allow me to." "I wouldn't object," she said quietly, glancing away. "But I'm not the one you need to be concerned about. I have a boyfriend." I shrugged. "If you're laughing as you say that, perhaps it's time you found someone who takes you more seriously." Her smile flickered back, but only for a fleeting moment. It faded, and she closed her eyes. "He's twice your size," she warned. "So?" I replied. She slowly opened her eyes. "He's standing directly behind you." I looked up. He was indeed massive and clearly agitated. I remained composed and offered him a beer. He promptly popped the cap on the counter, downed it in 2 swift gulps, and let out 2 loud burps. His companions appeared visibly impressed. "Why are you talking to my girl?" he demanded, stepping closer. "You know that's incredibly rude, right?" I remarked. "This is a party." "What?" "I brought you a beer. Perhaps you could fetch one for me as well." He paused, mumbled an apology, and ambled away. "See?" he grunted at Lori. She smiled at me. I handed her the second bottle. "If he can't find one, give him this one." Following that evening, we began spending more time together. Lori was sweet, devoted, stunningly beautiful, and tragically wasted on Todd. He was a sluggish, bulky lineman with aspirations of playing professionally. Women were drawn to him, seeking the spotlight he inadvertently cast. He never refused their advances. On one occasion, I witnessed him discreetly slip away with a heavy-set blonde while Lori waited inside. Despite possessing a keen intellect, Lori enrolled in easy classes. She had no declared major and no discernible plan. One evening, she called me. Todd was, as usual, likely with another woman. "You must think I'm utterly pathetic," she confessed, "talking to you night after night, knowing Todd is cheating." "I don't think you're foolish," I replied. "Some of your choices do perplex me, but I don't mind Todd's infidelity. It simply grants me more time with you." "Why?" she asked. "I thought we were merely friends." "That's precisely the issue. I desire more. I'm hoping that as we spend more time together, it will become increasingly evident that I am the superior choice." She fell silent for a moment, then shifted the subject. "Aside from Todd, what else about me surprises you?" "Your academic pursuits," I responded. "You are intelligent, yet you are not challenging yourself." She smiled. "I have no desire for a career. I simply wish to be an exceptional wife and mother." I stared at her. "If that is your aspiration, then why are you here? Why not take courses that would actually assist you in achieving that goal?" Lori shrugged, her arms crossed loosely. "Todd's plan was always to go professional," she explained. "But to remain on the team, he had to continue his studies. So I took the same classes to support him. I wrote his assignments. He excelled at those. He flunked the tests naturally, but the professors attributed it to test anxiety. They granted him makeup work. He barely scraped by." I raised an eyebrow. "So, the grand plan was for him to make it to the NFL, you two would marry, and live happily ever after in wealth?" "Precisely," she said bitterly, "until he started cheating. First with the cleaning lady, then the neighbors, then the teachers." "Lori, please," I said gently. "He'll stop once we're married," she muttered, though even she sounded unconvinced. "You deserve better," I told her, my voice low. Our eyes met. Then she kissed me. It wasn't a tentative or confused kiss. It was deep, genuine, and electric. But before I could fully react, she pulled away abruptly. "No," she said, her breath coming in shaky gasps. "You need someone who truly sees you, Lori," I stated. "Someone who wouldn't abandon you the moment a blonde batted her eyelashes. Someone who stays. That person is standing right here." Her voice cracked as she attempted to lighten the mood. "So you have a preference for dark-haired girls, do you?" "This isn't about sex," I clarified firmly. "I have never crossed that line." She looked at me, bewildered. "Then what is this? Why are you always around?" "If you want me to leave," I said quietly, "just say the word." She remained silent. My tone softened. "I am here because I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you at that party. I know it's a hopeless situation, much like yours with Todd, but love has a way of making you believe in the impossible." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Like what?" I hesitated. "Never mind, I've had enough for one evening." I turned to leave, but she called out, "Mark, you'll see me tomorrow, won't you?" "That's the thing about love," I said with a faint smile. "You keep returning, even when it brings you pain." And just like that, 2 years passed. I remained devoted to someone engaged to another man. I missed out on genuine opportunities. I was not unattractive. I simply had no interest in anyone else. No one was Lori Powski. Eventually, circumstances began to shift. That Christmas, she gave me cologne, instructing me to wear it for her. I would have worn it daily, even if it smelled like refuse. On the final day of the academic year, she reached for my hand, clutching it tightly as the sound of the last bell echoed in the distance. "Don't wear it for other girls," Lori whispered, her gaze fixed on the bracelet she had given me. I won't, I responded softly, my heart already aching at the thought of our impending farewell. Her voice wavered. I am going to miss you so much. It's only 3 months, I said, attempting to sound steady. I'll be working with my family saving up. So when fall arrives and you're back, waiting for Todd, we can do more. She shook her head, blinking back tears. 3 months feels like an eternity. I squeezed her hand. It will fly by. Damn it, Mark, she said, her voice breaking. I think I love you too. Why does life have to be so complicated? She dissolved into tears, pressed something into my hand, and ran off. I stood frozen. She loves me. When I looked down, it was a folded note containing her phone number and a simple message. Call me. And I did. Back then, long-distance calls were not inexpensive. I likely spent a quarter of my summer earnings on calls to Missouri. As it turned out, I spoke with her more frequently than Todd did, and he lived right next door. When I returned to campus that autumn, I was completely unprepared for what was about to happen. I had barely finished unpacking when a loud, insistent knock rattled my door. I opened it to find Todd standing there, blocking the doorway like a human barricade. Where have you been? He demanded. Whatever you suspect I've done, I haven't, I said, holding up my hands. I just arrived. That's the problem, he muttered. I've been here for 3 days and haven't had a moment to myself. I need you to do what you did last year. I raised an eyebrow. And what exactly was that? Keep Lori company while I'm occupied, he said casually. It keeps other suitors at bay. Lets me focus on my training. Once we're married, football will be my sole glory. I owe you, man. When I sign my multi-million-dollar NBA contract, I'll share the profits with you. I stared at him. Right, because I'm your boyfriend. He clearly didn't grasp the implication and turned to walk away. I couldn't resist. Hey, Todd, I called after him. The NBA is basketball. You play football. That's the NFL. He stopped and turned, a frown on his face. Which one's the car thing? NHL, right? Nope. Damn it, he muttered. My brother told me that. I'm going to kick his ass. He stormed off. Less than 20 minutes later, Lori appeared. That final year marked a profound shift. Lori and I were inseparable. When we weren't attending classes, we were engaged in passionate kisses. By springtime, things had progressed physically. She carried a burden of guilt, so I never pressured her, but each farewell became increasingly difficult. I want you so much, she confessed to me once. Kissing you is far better than sex with Todd. If we ever did sleep together, it would be absolutely incredible. You've only been with him once, she nodded. I keep wishing summer wouldn't arrive. She sighed. The draft is approaching. Todd gets picked. We'll move and I'll lose you. But I love you, Mark. My heart nearly burst. I loved her too. But I told myself that perhaps the summer separation would help me move on. Then came an unexpected twist. Todd was not drafted, not in any round, no invitations, no callbacks. He lost his agent and even asked me to make a cold call to a Canadian team. I actually reached someone in Ottawa. I'm calling on behalf of Todd Williams, I stated. Who? The individual on the other end inquired, before abruptly hanging up. Not long after, I gained access to Todd's scouting profile. It was grim. He possessed the physical size, but lacked the necessary speed and mental acuity. Teams had years of game footage demonstrating how irrelevant he had become on the field. He was no longer being blocked. He was actively being avoided. With no degree, no remaining eligibility, and no concrete plan, Todd began to unravel. He disappeared from classes, started drinking heavily, and spiraled into a deep depression. Lori didn't seem overly distressed. In a way, it's a blessing, she told me. Now I don't have to leave you. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. He'll figure things out, she added. But right now, this means I get more time with you. From the very beginning, she had been a dream I thought would forever remain out of reach. Even after she declared her love for me, I couldn't fully believe it. Now it felt real. But love, I understood, only held meaning if you were willing to fight for it. Don't look at me like that, you idiot, she said. I told you I love you too, but I also love him. I never thought it was possible to love two people, but I swear I do. I was rendered speechless. I'm still marrying Todd, she whispered, because that's what everyone expects. It feels as though if I don't, my entire world will collapse. She didn't sound entirely convinced. Over the past 2 years, she had spent considerably more time with me. Todd was rarely present, perpetually distracted or engaged in infidelity. I'd convinced myself that if I remained patient, she would ultimately choose me. The truth was, I had never truly intended to let her go. I loved her far too much. But when you love someone that deeply, you don't force them. You simply want them to be happy. Therefore, I didn't push. I listened. I hoped. Deep down, I envisioned a future with her, a life where I could provide her with everything she had ever desired. But I ultimately entrusted it to fate, rolled the dice, and somehow, against all odds, I got lucky. It wasn't an overnight transformation. It was a slow, painful process. The initial shift occurred when they decided against relocating back to Missouri. Todd was unwilling to return as a failure. They remained in Illinois. He attempted to find employment but proved incapable of anything outside of football. He failed miserably at every job, still clinging to the hope of a second chance. The NFL, the CFL, arena leagues, nothing materialized. Meanwhile, he continued to eat as if he were still in training, without actually engaging in any physical conditioning. Within 8 months, he had ballooned to an unhealthy weight. The sole positive aspect was that I could see Lori whenever I wished. She never explicitly stated that Todd was failing, but she professed her love for me every single day. The first indication that things were truly falling apart came when Lori informed me that she had started working as a waitress and found the job far more challenging than she had anticipated. They desperately needed her income simply to cover their rent. Then, one afternoon at work, I received a frantic call from her. She was sobbing, pleading with me to come and pick her up. I'd never visited their apartment before, but it was only about an hour away. By that point, I'd been managing the family business for 3 months. Prior to that, after graduating from college, I'd taken a position outside the company, a decision that was not well received by my family. I was determined to prove my worth independently. My older brother, Jeff, had become a teacher, and my younger brother, Michael, pursued a career as a writer. Neither had any interest in the business, but they were content to collect passive income from it. When my father's health began to decline, everyone assumed I would step in. I'd worked summers at the company and possessed the most intimate knowledge of its operations, but my brothers were solely concerned with their financial returns. Eventually, my father confronted me. "You're wasting your time," he stated. "You're merely another middle manager reporting to individuals who have never set foot on a production floor. Why settle for that when you could run your own enterprise? It's yours, Mark. Your brothers have no interest. Just take it." He lived for 3 more years, long enough to meet his granddaughter. During that time, he imparted his wisdom to me, explaining how the business had only experienced one loss during his divorce, how he had protected his assets through a family trust, and how he maintained the appearance of wealth on a reported income of $200 per week. It was a shrewd strategy, though not entirely ethical. He vowed that no woman would ever extract a single dime from him again. However, nothing could have prepared me for the state of Lori's apartment. It was in a deplorable condition. I hesitated to even park my new Mustang nearby. She was sitting outside on a bench crying with a suitcase at her feet. When she spotted me, she ran to the car. Then Todd's head appeared at the window. "Take her," he yelled. "She's worthless. She just wanted to live off me anyway. If you want a woman who only shows up when she needs something, she's all yours." He slammed the window shut. I never saw him again. On the drive back, Lori recounted the entire story. She had endured 2 consecutive 12-hour shifts within a 24-hour period and returned home to discover Todd entangled in bed with a woman of substantial build, a blonde. Upon confronting him, he dismissed her suspicions as foolish, asserting she was naive to believe he would ever alter his ways. He even boasted about his frugality, claiming it was more sensible to host Zacks at home rather than squandering funds on rented accommodations. The other woman was conspicuously present, reclining in Lore's bathrobe and absorbed in reading bridal magazines. This image was the breaking point. She hastily gathered a bag, contacted me, and departed. Given my work obligations, we paused for a midday meal, which we consumed within my office. I assured her of my unwavering support for any assistance she required. I extended an offer to fly her back to Missouri, but she indicated a need for personal reflection, perhaps a span of 1 week, to contemplate her situation. This was to be a final opportunity for Todd to demonstrate his commitment to change. Though not a scholar of history, a sudden desire to embark on a new narrative with her ignited within me. That very afternoon, I presented Lori with my credit card and enlisted my assistant to accompany her on a shopping excursion. I arranged for her to stay in my guest room. She never returned to Todd's. It felt remarkably natural, as if our paths had always been intertwined. She simply chose not to go back to Todd. Several weeks later, I invited her to a family gathering. My stepmother drew me aside, imparting a crucial piece of advice. Do not let her go. She is the one. Before I could articulate a response, Lori turned to me, her words conveying a sense of readiness. "I've just been waiting for you to ask." Utterly taken aback, I dropped to one knee. "Lori," I began, "I haven't managed to procure a ring just yet. However, if you consent, we will embark on a quest to find one at the earliest moment tomorrow morning. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she exclaimed, her voice ringing with enthusiasm, before I could even complete my question. Events unfolded with remarkable speed. The following day, my stepmother, Lori, and my sisters-in-law commenced the intricate planning of the wedding ceremony. Lori contacted her parents, who subsequently arranged to fly in that weekend to meet me and to seek clarification regarding Todd's involvement. Her father even made it a point to visit Todd. Whatever dialogue transpired between them must have been exceptionally intense. Upon his return, he pulled me aside, clasped my hand firmly, and bestowed his paternal approval. Todd's name was never mentioned again, but I could discern that he had crossed a boundary that her father deemed unforgivable. For more than 25 years, I genuinely believed I had upheld my promise. I was convinced that I had bestowed upon Lori the utmost happiness a woman could experience. Evidently, my perception was flawed. The journey to Michigan passed in a blur. My Mustang seemed to defy the very laws of physics as it accelerated down the highway. I found myself repeatedly glancing at the speedometer, instinctively easing off the accelerator. I located a roadside establishment near Dearborn, checked in, and set my alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning. However, at 7, my telephone began to ring. "Hello," I rasped. "You sound as dreadful as I feel," Lori's voice responded. "Have you sufficiently composed yourself to engage in a conversation?" "I have no desire to converse," I stated flatly. "I relinquished everything to you. I never denied you anything. I loved you enough to strive towards constructing an ideal existence, and we achieved it," she interjected rapidly. "Mark, we shared nearly 3 decades together. That carries considerable weight. We can rectify this situation. I was the happiest woman alive. Can we not simply revert to how things were?" "No," I replied, because our foundation was built upon deception. I overheard your conversation with Katie yesterday. That was no mere oversight. It represented a prolonged, emotionally charged affair. Consequently, while I devoted myself entirely to you, you were diverting your affections elsewhere. That's precisely how it feels. It's like being physically struck by the individual you place the most trust in. Mark, please. No. The sole utterance remaining is what I've already conveyed. Pack your belongings. Be gone before my arrival. Following that, we will engage in discussions through legal channels. You're discarding 30 years over this, she cried, her voice trembling. I'll cease. I solemnly swear we will navigate through this. That, I snapped, was the most foolish statement you could possibly utter. What? The mere acknowledgement that you would stop simply confirms that the behavior persists. Do not cease. Go and be with him. I am approaching 50 years of age. I am finished with squandering my time on individuals who engage in infidelity. I require someone who stands with me, not against me. I terminated the call before she could offer a rejoinder. She attempted to reach me again. I disregarded her calls, subsequently blocking her number. At the exhibition, I adhered to my customary routine, meticulously cleaning the vehicle, inspecting the tires, and polishing every surface of the Mustang I so cherished. I surveyed the display area, capturing photographs, maintaining a polite demeanor, but avoiding any direct engagement. Typically, Lori would have been by my side, engaging in conversation with other spouses, discussing family matters and travel plans. This year, I maintained my solitude. Eventually, an inquiry arose. Where is your wife? At home, I responded with a strained smile. Internally, a profound sense of anguish consumed me. A void, shaped like a crescent moon, had formed in my chest. That evening, I dined alone at the motel. Ordinarily, we would have commenced our journey home immediately after the exhibition concluded. This time, I opted to remain. There was no imperative to hasten. I arrived home the subsequent afternoon. To my astonishment, her vehicle remained parked in the driveway. Equally present were my brother-in-law's vehicle and a rental car. Initially, I conjectured that she had rented a vehicle and that Eric had arrived to discuss matters pertaining to Katie. However, upon entering the residence, I realized my assumption was erroneous. Katie and Eric were indeed present. Furthermore, Lori's parents were there, exhibiting expressions of astonishment and palpable discomfort. Lori was seated between her daughter and her mother, both offering gestures of solace. Everything will be all right, her mother whispered. I did not even fully close the door before posing the question, why are you still here? They all appeared taken aback by the coldness of my tone. You may retain the vehicle, I stated. When I presented it to you, it became yours. I will continue to meet the loan obligations, but you will need to secure your own insurance. Mark, her father began, let's endeavor to resolve this amicably. You have always demonstrated yourself to be an exemplary son-in-law. I experienced immense relief when Lori selected you rather than that insufferable football player. Frankly, I wish he had married Todd, I interjected. I could have sought an alternative partner and circumvented this entire ordeal. Come now, Mark, he responded with a melancholic smile. Every marital union encounters challenges. Lori's mother and I nearly separated after I gambled away an entire paycheck in Las Vegas. This situation is of far lesser consequence. Of lesser consequence? I inquired sharply. She has been engaged in an extramarital affair, not a momentary lapse in judgment, a sustained relationship. What? He blinked, visibly startled. I had assumed, no, your daughter has been engaged in infidelity for a considerable duration. I discovered this yesterday when she was admonishing Katie for her own indiscretion. Katie's complexion turned ashen. Katie? Eric inquired. He's fabricating the truth, isn't he? Katie's gaze fell, her silence profound. Lori erupted into a torrent of sobs. It was evident that she had divulged nothing to her parents. Eric and Katie commenced a heated exchange of accusations. I quietly ascended the staircase to begin unpacking. Lori followed me, her voice laced with accusation. Are you content now? You've publicly humiliated me in front of my parents. You've jeopardized our daughter's marriage. I turned to face her, my demeanor calm. I conveyed the unvarnished truth to them, something you are still unwilling to do. You have never offered any explanation regarding your affair. The specifics are irrelevant to me. I simply desire your departure. As for Katie, I issued a warning. I advised her to inform Eric. She neglected to do so, hence I intervened. I moved purposefully into the garage, my mind focused and resolute. Without uttering a word, I retrieved the car wash supplies and transported them to the driveway. The sun, descending towards the horizon, cast a warm, golden hue over the surroundings. I commenced my task. From behind me, a voice inquired, "Do you truly believe this is the opportune moment to wash your vehicle?" I turned my head slightly. My father-in-law stood at the edge of the driveway, his arms crossed. "Tomorrow is Monday," I replied, my gaze fixed on my work. "I have professional commitments, and my car is coated in road grime. It's too aesthetically pleasing to remain in such a state." He paused, his brow furrowed. "But don't you think you should attempt to reconcile with Lori?" I continued scrubbing. "There is nothing to reconcile. The matter has been definitively resolved." He frowned, just like that. "Precisely." I inquired about the identity of the individual with whom she was involved. She refused to disclose it. That revelation speaks volumes. His well-being held greater significance than the preservation of our marriage. I exhaled slowly and stepped back from the hood of the automobile. I harbored the conviction that she was the singular love of my existence, I stated quietly. I dedicated my entire being to her, and whilst I was doing so, she was engaged in infidelity. For an indeterminate period, who can say? She contacted me yesterday to offer an apology, and that's when the full gravity of the situation became apparent. She is still involved with him. He remained silent, observing me. "There's nothing left to salvage," I added. "Accompany her when you depart. I am finished with squandering my life on an individual who deliberately deceived me." He approached me, his voice lowering. "I am a legal professional. I possess an understanding of the ramifications of such situations, and I too am experiencing anger. Believe me, However, I am also aware of Lori's deep affection for you. I advised her not to vacate the premises immediately, pending any court pronouncements. Remaining provides both of you with the optimal opportunity for dialogue. My intention is to contest the divorce petition and formally request court-mandated counseling. I paused, placing my hands on my hips, then turned to face him directly. No judicial body can compel me to accept back an individual who has engaged in infidelity. She has stated she will cease her actions, he said gently. That represents progress. I picked up the hose, adjusted the nozzle, and allowed the water to flow. Pursue whatever course of action you deem necessary, I replied. With that, I resumed washing the car. Eric departed in a fit of frustration. A few minutes later, Katie emerged, her eyes red and swollen. How could you do this? She asked, her voice barely audible. I offered no response, continuing my meticulous process of washing, waxing, and polishing. The entire household seemed to be observing the scene as if it were a theatrical performance. But I was indifferent. My focus remained solely on the one element that still retained its coherence, my automobile. Upon completing my packing, I retrieved an additional suitcase from the closet and commenced filling it. Lori stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her voice firm. I am not leaving. My father advised me that any competent legal counsel would offer the same counsel: stay put. So unless you physically remove me, I intend to remain. I did not even lift my gaze. We are incapable of conversing without resorting to arguments, and I possess neither the inclination nor the inclination to resort to physical aggression towards you. I shall await the court's directive for your departure. You cannot simply abscond from your responsibilities, she shouted. We must resolve this. It is beyond resolution, I stated flatly. You simply lack the desire to resolve it. I am not the individual who fractured it, I countered, my tone as cold as ice. My legal representative will be in contact with your father once I have retained one, likely tomorrow. I do not wish for, she began, but I cut her off. We have already discussed this extensively. I was experiencing internal turmoil, but I maintained a calm demeanor. I refused to allow her to perceive the extent of the devastation she had wrought. At that precise moment, my telephone rang, an unexpected lifeline. It was my neighbor from the lakeside cabin. Mark, he announced, the vegetation at your cabin has grown entirely out of control. It's practically a fire hazard. Would you like me to mow it? Yes, please proceed, I replied. I will stop by tomorrow to compensate you. You needn't trouble yourself. Simply mail me the payment. No, I stated, already reaching for my keys. I will come in person. My initial plan did not include a stay at the cabin. I had intended to secure lodging at a motel until the eviction proceedings concluded. However, the cabin suddenly seemed like the ideal sanctuary. She could remain in the main residence. I would occupy the dacha, a smaller dwelling, yet equipped with a kitchen, a functional television, and internet connectivity, should I reestablish the service. The sole inconvenience was a 45-minute commute, but I reveled in the act of driving. The following morning, after conducting my customary inspection of the production floor, I placed a call to my attorney. While he did not specialize in divorce cases, he referred me to a colleague who did. The newly engaged legal counsel accepted the case. He outlined 2 potential courses of action. The first involved filing for divorce on the grounds of infidelity, stipulating that she received nothing beyond the vehicle and personal effects, and initiating legal action against the individual with whom she engaged in the affair. This was entirely permissible within the confines of our state's legal framework. The second option was a no-fault divorce, accompanied by a modest settlement to facilitate her transition. He strongly advised against inquiring about the identity of the person with whom she had the affair. "It will not serve your interests," he stated. "What is paramount is moving forward." He had presided over hundreds of divorce proceedings and shared a recurring piece of wisdom. The majority of marriages do not dissolve due to malevolent individuals, but rather as a consequence of poor decisions and selfish impulses. The clients who achieve the greatest sense of contentment are those who relinquish their grievances and focus on pursuits that rekindle their zest for life. Those who harbor bitterness tend to age prematurely and meet a miserable end. While I did not fully grasp the profundity of his statement, I concurred with his assessment. I presented him with a check, and he assured me that the necessary documentation would be prepared within a few days, facilitating a meeting with Lori and her father. I provided him with my father-in-law's telephone number. The remainder of the day was dedicated to an attempt to concentrate on business matters. I reasoned that maintaining a sense of stability would aid in my emotional recovery. It proved ineffective. Shortly before the midday meal, my secretary signaled me to my office. "You have an incoming telephone call," she announced. Sylvia had been a steadfast member of my staff since I assumed control of the company. She typically intercepted Lori's calls, so I felt compelled to apprise her of the situation in due course. Assuming the call was from a client, I answered. "Mark Brown," I responded curtly. "Lori Brown," she reciprocated, matching my tone with a forced jocularity, attempting to instill a sense of reason in her husband. "Did you genuinely telephone solely to ascertain if I had retained legal counsel?" "Mark, I find it utterly unbelievable that you would resort to such measures," she declared, her voice escalating. "Yes, I did," I stated impassively. "That is the standard procedure when individuals are undergoing a divorce. Your father has already apprehended me of your intentions, your refusal to vacate the residence, your strategy to prolong legal proceedings, and your insistence on counseling. He meticulously outlined your entire plan." "Listen, dear," she began. "Do not address me in such a manner," I snapped. "Reserve those endearing terms for the individual with whom you engaged in intimacy." There was a perceptible pause, followed by her quiet admission. "I remained in the house solely to facilitate communication. My father and I believed that with sufficient time you would regain your composure. When I discovered," I continued, "that Lori, the only question I posed was the identity of the individual, and you offered no response. I allowed the silence to persist before elaborating. You prioritized his interests above our marital union. Consequently, I sincerely hope he proves his worth. For once this is concluded, you will be compelled to depart, and you will receive nothing beyond the legally mandated provisions." Her voice faltered. "You cannot possibly mean that." "I will disclose everything. Simply inquire." "I am no longer concerned," I stated, my voice imbued with unyielding resolve. "My legal counsel has advised me that the time has arrived to move forward, and he is unequivocally correct. I am prepared for a fresh start." "That is precisely my desire as well," she interjected rapidly. "A new beginning. We can overcome this challenge." "You fail to comprehend," I articulated firmly. "I aspire to a new chapter devoid of your presence. I require an individual in whom I can place my trust, someone capable of reciprocating my love, an individual who genuinely reciprocates my affection." "We are not concluded, Mark," she insisted, a note of desperation permeating her tone. We have endured far too much to allow such a minor transgression to dismantle our bond. We have a child. Farewell, Lori, I stated, and terminated the call. 3 hours later, my telephone rang once more. It was Katie. Dad, why are you doing this? She asked softly. Does Mom not deserve better after all these years? Katie, I replied, striving to maintain my composure. When an individual engages in infidelity with their spouse for an extended period, they forfeit any claim to preferential treatment. They are deserving of consequences. I never mistreated your mother. I cherished her from the outset. I remained steadfastly loyal. If anyone is deserving of better, it is I. She fell silent. I gently prompted her, allow me to pose a question. If you were to discover that I had been unfaithful to your mother for years, engaging in romantic liaisons with secretaries or clients, on whose side would your allegiance lie? Likely Mom's, she conceded. However, I would still implore you both to remain together. No child desires to witness their parents' separation. Then why is your support not with me at this juncture? I did not engage in infidelity. There was a brief pause. Perhaps because it feels as though it is my fault, she whispered. If I had not lost control and voiced what I did, none of this would have come to light. You imply that I would have remained blissfully ignorant? I inquired. Why did you not disclose this to me, Katie? Was I an inadequate father? No, never, she responded swiftly, her voice beginning to tremble. I should have informed you. However, Mom indicated that it had concluded. She stated that you were aware. I did not wish for you to inform Eric. He is currently experiencing profound emotional distress. He used to regard me with the same adoration that you directed towards Mom. But that sentiment has since changed. Even if we manage to resolve our issues, the feeling will not be the same. Your fortune is that it was merely an isolated incident, I stated. Eric is understandably irate. He has every right to be, yet he cherishes you. He may extend forgiveness. However, you still engaged in infidelity, Katie. That emotional pain does not simply dissipate. I was intoxicated, she cried. Catherine, desist. My tone hardened. You are an adult. You are fully cognizant of your actions. If you are married and your husband is not present, you do not indulge in alcohol consumption, and do not deceive yourself. You conveyed to your mother that you were not excessively inebriated. You even expressed a desire to repeat the experience. You were fully aware of the implications of your actions. She sniffled audibly on the other end. I have learned my lesson. I solemnly vow that I did not comprehend the extent of Eric's sacrifices for me. How weary he becomes, working in extensive overtime merely to support us. I am gratified that you have finally recognized this truth. There was a brief pause, and then she inquired, and what of Mom? She desires to reconcile with you as well. This situation is fundamentally different, I stated firmly. Your mother was not intoxicated. She was not experiencing confusion. She deliberately betrayed me on multiple occasions. I perceive no viable pathway back from such egregious conduct. She loves you, Dad, Katie said softly. I truly do not believe she can endure this without your presence. That is no longer my concern, I replied. She has an alternative confidant now. Allow him to assume responsibility for her. I have no intention of functioning as the third party in this entanglement. I must move forward. I hope matters resolve favorably with Eric, I added gently. Take care, sweetheart. 3 days later, I encountered Lori once more. This time, we were seated across from each other at a table in my lawyer's office. She was elegantly attired, her hair freshly styled, still radiating beauty despite the passage of time and the emergence of a few additional lines on her face. "What are you gazing at?" she inquired. "I am merely contemplating your enduring loveliness," I responded, "and pondering how I am expected to overcome my feelings for you." "You are not obligated to," she stated with a gentle smile. "I, however, must," I replied. "It will require time, but I will persevere." Her smile faded. "Mark, we must cease this endeavor before it is too late," my lawyer interjected. "My client is present to explore divorce settlement options. He has demonstrated a reasonable disposition and wishes to present a choice regarding the progression of this matter." "Why should I consent to any of these proposals?" Lori demanded indignantly. "I cherish my husband. This entire situation is absurd. I refuse to surrender so readily." "Lori, please," her father implored. My lawyer strategically placed two distinct sets of documents before her. "What are these?" her father inquired. "There are two distinct approaches," the attorney explained. "We advocate for a no-fault divorce. It is a more straightforward, expeditious, and less burdensome process for all parties involved. However, should she decline this option, we will proceed on the grounds of infidelity. The sole negotiable aspect pertains to the settlement amount." "This is utterly preposterous," her father exclaimed. "You are expelling her with merely a vehicle and the attire she is wearing." "She engaged in infidelity for years," I asserted. "She refuses to disclose the individual or the duration. Let him provide for her now." I remained steadfastly loyal. I honored my marital vows. "I loved you too," Lori cried, "and I did not engage in infidelity." "Then what do you categorize as clandestine encounters with another individual over a protracted period?" I countered sharply. "Do you truly anticipate that I would extend forgiveness for such transgressions?" My lawyer subtly signaled me to cease my outburst. "I intend to petition the court for mandatory therapeutic intervention," her father declared. "They still harbor affection for one another." "There is no necessity for such action," my lawyer responded. "My client concurs. He will even bear the expense. You may select the therapist." "No," I commenced, but my lawyer silenced me with a glance. "Should the therapeutic process prove unsuccessful," he continued, "we will proceed with the divorce. The ultimate decision rests with Mrs. Brown." He then turned his attention to Lori. "Court records are publicly accessible. In the event of a fault-based divorce, every individual, including neighbors and acquaintances, will possess precise knowledge of the circumstances. However, with a no-fault divorce, you retain the ability to safeguard your privacy." Lori's expression remained impassive. "Half the town will label you a harlot," he added bluntly. "Let them speak their minds," she declared. "I refuse to relinquish my claim on Mark," her father stated, shaking his head. "Where are these figures originating from? He claims an income of $200 per week, yet he drives a vehicle of that caliber. This suggests a degree of creative accounting." My lawyer then interjected, "Given the absence of any children, she may be awarded $15,000 distributed over a 3-year period. He owned the residence prior to the marriage. She will not acquire it." "That is inequitable," I retorted. "I provided financial support for her for 25 years while she maintained a clandestine relationship. I sought a partner with whom to share my twilight years, not a part-time spouse and a full-time deceiver. If this were a commercial transaction, I would initiate legal proceedings for fraud." A profound silence descended upon the room as Lori began to weep. "You fail to comprehend," she sobbed. "I love you, Mark. I have always loved you. We can grow old together." "That was my aspiration," I stated. "However, not with a third individual present in our lives. We are making no progress," my lawyer declared. "Should Mrs. Brown fail to reach a settlement following counseling, we will initiate proceedings based on infidelity. You have 3 days to identify a therapist. My client will participate." "May I simply inform him of the individual?" Lori inquired. "We will communicate exclusively during our sessions," I stipulated. "No private conversations will transpire." "You could reside at the house during therapy," she suggested. "Separate sleeping quarters. It remains your domicile." "I am unwilling to jeopardize anything further. We are presently engaged in legal proceedings, and I have already made alternative arrangements." "You are genuinely abandoning everything?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "You are unwilling to even attempt to mend this?" "You are the one who fractured it," I stated. "I am merely endeavoring to reconstruct what remains of my life." Less than an hour later, I received a telephone call. Lori and her father had identified a therapist. My lawyer had already conducted a thorough vetting process. Upon my arrival, the therapist greeted us with effusive warmth. She was a woman of considerable stature, adorned with oversized spectacles and possessing a remarkably calm demeanor. "Let us arrange our seating," she proposed. "Select positions that facilitate open discourse." I chose a particular seat. Lori, however, maneuvered her chair to rest directly beside mine. I glanced in her direction. The therapist raised an eyebrow, remarking, "Intriguing. I have perused your file. I am aware that Lori was the transgressor in this situation. Most individuals in your position would instinctively distance their seating when their spouse approaches. You, however, have not. I am still attempting to ascertain the underlying reason for this." I offered a shrug. "My objective here is straightforward," she stated. "Regardless of the ultimate outcome, my aim is for both of you to depart this process in a more improved state. Mrs. Brown, let us commence with you. What is the purpose of your presence here?" "To avert the divorce. I wish to salvage our marriage." "And you, Mr. Brown?" "I'm here to accelerate this," I stated. Her surprise was evident. "My legal counsel anticipated their insistence on therapy," I clarified. "Delaying for a judicial decree would have resulted in a 6-week wait for a ruling, followed by months of treatment. By conceding up front, I have reduced the timeline by 3 months. My divorce will be finalized sooner." "So you've definitively concluded it's over?" the therapist inquired. "It is." "Mr. Brown, what led to the dissolution of your marriage?" "My wife was unfaithful. I'm finished with a spouse who betrayed my trust." "Mrs. Brown, do you concur?" the therapist asked. "No," Lori asserted firmly. "He fails to comprehend. My affection for him remains. I desire our union." "He doesn't grasp it," I retorted sharply. "Because she never confided anything in me. I have no clue how or when it began. I don't even know this man's identity or what I allegedly did to warrant such treatment. I devoted myself to her, and you were the most exceptional husband anyone could wish for." She wept. "It didn't begin. It simply never ceased. I felt obligated to him. And wait, it never ceased." I sprang up, overturning my chair. "It's Todd, isn't it?" Lori dissolved into tears, her shoulders shaking as she sat on the edge of the therapist's sofa. The therapist leaned forward, her tone gentle. "Lori, take a breath. Let's—" But I was already on my feet, heading for the exit. "Mr. Brown, where are you going?" she called out. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I no longer require this, I calmly responded. You've settled your account, but as far as I'm concerned, this matter is concluded. The therapist rose, concern etched on her face. What exactly do you mean? I turned slightly, just enough to speak over my shoulder. When I first encountered Lori, she was still entangled with a man who repeatedly deceived her. What I failed to realize was that she never truly severed ties with him. We abstained from intimacy prior to our wedding, not even once. Yet apparently she never ceased her relations with him. Lori emitted a choked sob, but I pressed on. Their connection predates ours by a considerable margin. Very well. But the sole source of my regret is supporting her throughout these years, believing in her sincerity towards me. The therapist's voice softened. What transpires now? I intend to conduct a DNA test for Katie, I stated. She doesn't exhibit traits akin to mine. She never truly has. If Todd is indeed her father, I will sue him for every cent I've invested in her upbringing. And if everything between Lori and me was built upon falsehoods, I will pursue an annulment on grounds of fraud. Lori entered into marriage with me under deceptive pretenses. I opened the door, casting one final glance backward. They might owe me hundreds of thousands. Regardless, I am finished. I departed without looking back. At my attorney's office, I disclosed everything. He immediately commenced his work. 2 days later, my existence imploded. I became simultaneously notorious and reviled. My father-in-law was incandescent with rage. My mother-in-law heartbroken. Katie devastated. Todd telephoned issuing threats. A complete stranger even requested a meeting. Then her father stormed into my office. Damn it, Mark, what happened to you? I fell in love, I replied, and was subsequently betrayed. Let it go, he urged. Lori is in the hospital. Do I concern myself with that? I retorted. She deceived me for 25 years. She was never truly mine. And you ask if I feel remorse. I understand, he said with a sigh. But Katie is your daughter. He sat down slowly, surveying the room. Do you have anything to drink? He inquired. I shook my head. No, of course, he remarked with a faint smile. You don't drink. I always admired that quality about you. I gave him a pointed look. I never thought you truly liked me. Come now, he said, leaning forward. When I first met you, I was simply taken aback. Everyone assumed Lori would end up with Todd, but once I witnessed the true nature of the man Todd was, I was relieved she married you instead. You brought her happiness. I observed it. And had I known she was still involved with him, I would have put a stop to it. He met my gaze directly. No matter what transpired, he stated quietly, she loves you, and Katie is your daughter. I offered no response. You don't need a DNA test, Mark, he added. Todd is too intellectually challenged to be her father. I let out a soft chuckle. It makes no difference, I said. I raised her. I imparted my values to her, and I cannot erase the affection I've felt for her since the day she was born. However, if Todd is her biological father, then he owes me. Period. I paused briefly, then looked back at him. You're missing the point, I explained. Todd didn't ruin anything. All I ever desired was a partner. But instead, I found someone whose heart was perpetually elsewhere. You're mistaken, he countered. She dedicated her life, her time, her heart to you. Todd received nothing but a few guilt-ridden encounters. You received everything of substance. Even if it occurred only once or twice, I admitted softly, it was still improper. I acknowledged that, he nodded. But life is complex. It's not merely black and white. It encompasses every shade in between. Just consider it. Meanwhile, your wife is hospitalized. Doesn't she at least warrant a visit? That evening, as I approached my vehicle, Katie was already there, seated in the passenger seat, weeping. "So I'm not your daughter?" she whispered. "I'll take the test, but I've never even met that man. How could you possibly believe I belong to him?" Before I could reply, Katie embraced me, sobbing. "You'll always be my girl," I assured her, holding her tightly. "This has absolutely nothing to do with you. It's about making that man pay." "Dad, how much do you think he's going to pay?" she inquired, pulling back. I was so enraged that I questioned Mom about it. She continued, "He's a failure, overweight, destitute, bitter, married to a disreputable woman, trapped in a life devoid of progress. He deceives her just as he did Mom, and his own mother mentioned she always insisted he use protection. He has no children, never has. I'm not his, not even his possessions." She studied my face. "What's wrong?" "It's not you," I explained. "It's simply that your mother and I never employed condoms. Once she started the birth control pill, we discontinued their use. But if she was procuring them for him, that implies she planned to be unfaithful. It wasn't an accidental occurrence, and that is what truly stings." I went to visit Lori at the hospital. She was connected to monitoring equipment and intravenous drips, but conscious. Her eyes met mine the moment I entered the room, initially flushed with emotion, then hardening into anger. "Are you here to gloat over my misfortune?" she asked coldly. "Your father requested I stop by," I replied, "but I can depart." I remained, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. "What occurred?" I inquired. "When you left, I experienced a severe panic attack. Initially, they suspected a heart attack. My blood pressure skyrocketed." She hesitated, then continued in a quieter tone. "I have only ever loved 2 men," she confessed. "I know you consider me promiscuous, but I have only been intimate with 2 individuals. If that label applies, I must be exceptionally poor at it." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I did not engage in infidelity to cause you pain. It wasn't some grand scheme. It simply happened. When I met you, I was still with Todd. You were aware of this, yet you persisted in your pursuit. You made me feel as though I held significance once more." Her voice faltered. "Eventually, I realized I loved you as well, but I never entirely ceased loving him. I found myself more drawn to you. I despised his treatment of me. However, feelings do not simply vanish. Our lives were already set in motion before you entered the picture. And suddenly, you became the other man. Even before we became intimate, it felt like I was betraying Todd." She lowered her gaze to the blanket, her fingers twisting the fabric. "You could have had me at any moment," she whispered. "I would have agreed, but you did not. You delayed because you were too considerate." I remained silent. "Matters with Todd continued to deteriorate," she continued. "He was unfaithful. We were financially strapped. I detested that existence. But whenever I contacted you, you responded as you always did. You made me feel like a princess." Her eyes glistened with tears. "I never lied to you, Mark. I loved you. I still do. I desired everything. A marriage, children, growing old together." Then her tone shifted, becoming defensive and wounded. "And don't look at me that way. You are still my husband. I am entitled to address you as I see fit." She attempted a smile, which quickly faded. I had our entire wedding planned. Then Todd called. He expressed his apologies, stated he was shattered after failing to go professional, that he required assistance, that I owed him one final opportunity. She averted her gaze. "I informed him about you. He became irate and terminated the call, A few days later, he telephoned again, calmer, said I had given you a chance, so I should extend him one as well, and I did. We began conversing, eventually becoming intimate. I closed my eyes. I didn't do it because I desired to. I acted out of a sense of obligation. He made me feel as though I had exploited him, as though I was indebted to him, and a part of me believed it. She dabbed her eyes once more. You provided me with funds. I purchased that dress, showed it to you, but I gave the remainder to him, rent, groceries. He relied on it. He made me feel as though everything that went wrong was my fault, she sniffled. It wasn't a weekly occurrence, perhaps once or twice a month, and I consistently ensured he used protection. That's why you're concerned about Katie. I understand. You should proceed with a DNA test. And when it confirms she is yours, I trust you will apologize to her. Her voice trembled. I severed all contact with Todd after Katie was born. That was when I finally recognized his true nature. She swallowed hard. Mark, he never loved me. He had a preference for blondes. He only remained with me because I assisted him in completing his studies. He returned for your wealth. I was too naive to perceive it. She appeared utterly defeated. One day, I brought him cash, arrived early. Katie was merely a few months old. We hadn't been intimate for months. He remarked that I resembled a whale. I overheard him through the door, laughing with another woman. Her voice dropped into a mocking imitation of his words. Look, I only tolerate her for the money. She's not even my type. Unintelligent, uninspiring in bed, excessively emotional. A minute later, that same woman emerged, overweight and missing teeth. She glanced at me and smiled as if she had achieved a victory. Then Todd stepped out. I ceased responding to his calls, but eventually he began issuing threats, said he would reveal everything to you. Her voice diminished, so I remained. I reasoned that once or twice a month wasn't so significant. It wasn't comparable to what we shared. It was merely a cost. For every 10 times I was intimate with you, I owed him one. Most of the time, I simply lay there contemplating my grocery list. She drew a breath, shaky and faint. Typically, I saw him while you were at work. I would meet him, then proceed with my shopping. I loved you, Mark. I loved you with my entire being, but a part of me was not yet prepared to let him go. She looked up at me, her eyes hollow. Now you know the complete truth. I turned and departed. Lori cried out after me, pleading for me to stay, but I did not look back. 25 years is a substantial duration, yet I still recalled the vicinity of that dilapidated apartment complex. I drove around until I spotted him. Todd, slumped on a porch step, barely recognizable. He was swollen, limping, unshaven, missing teeth, and dragging an oxygen tank. I stepped out and called his name. He looked up, his eyes hazy with recognition. A woman beside him appeared perplexed. "How's our girl?" he asked, grinning through the gaps in his teeth. I lunged at him. A single punch to the gut incapacitated him. His oxygen tube detached, and he gasped for air. I kicked him forcefully and repeatedly. He couldn't scream, only moan and wheeze. Then everything went black. I awoke to the sharp sting of smelling salts and the jingle of handcuffs. A paramedic knelt over me. Todd's wife had rendered me unconscious with a plank from the porch. The officers pulled me to my feet. I informed them I didn't require medical attention. One officer drove my Mustang to the station. I warned him, "Scratch it and I'll sue." They cuffed me to the steering wheel and allowed me to drive with a cop riding shotgun. "What kind of individual assaults a disabled diabetic?" he asked with evident disgust. I recounted the entire saga to him. Years of betrayal, blackmail, deception. Tell that to the district attorney, he advised. You might walk free. I contacted my lawyer. 2 hours later, I was released. No charges were filed. If I agreed to speak with Lori, she would corroborate the blackmail, which provided me with leverage. In exchange for Todd dropping his accusations, I withdrew mine. Frankly, it was inconsequential. The man had nothing left. He wouldn't survive another year. Lori remained hospitalized. Her father repeatedly contacted me, imploring me to halt the divorce proceedings. He asserted she was improving and eager to see me. Lori also called. Can you return? Don't delay a week. I finally acquiesced. She appeared radiant, reminiscent of the girl I met decades ago. Hello, my dear, she beamed. I'm so delighted. What is the source of your great happiness? I inquired. I assisted you. Todd poses no threat now. And Katie, she is yours. As Maury would say, you are the father. Everything will be perfectly fine. I would find it most agreeable to believe that, I stated. Yes, you were instrumental. But only after I consented to speak with you. Lori, I devoted 25 years of my life to you. And the singular instance I required assistance, you made it contingent. That is not indicative of love. She remained silent. And regarding Todd, he remains a threat because you have never truly relinquished him. You have yet to utter the one statement that holds paramount importance. That it is definitively over. She blinked, visibly stunned. You have never looked me directly in the eye and declared it completely concluded. Her mouth fell open. And Katie, I was always aware that she was my daughter. I needed to jolt her into self-awareness. She inherited my capacity for introspection and your aptitude for rationalizing any behavior. Lori began to weep. You aided me more than you can possibly imagine, I remarked. When you reiterated your account to the district attorney, it became a matter of public record. Now I can initiate proceedings for annulment based on fraud. The marriage was founded on a deception. You have some time before the court proceedings. You might consider commencing your packing. Her cardiac monitor registered a sharp spike. I glanced at it once. Take care, Lori, I said, and walked away. 3 weeks later, I leaned against the railing of a colossal cruise ship. The vast expanse of the open ocean caused a lurch in my stomach. Not out of fear, but a healthy respect for forces capable of eradicating you. I had a week remaining on my 2-week Caribbean excursion. The morning breeze prompted me to pull a hoodie over my Dream Cruise t-shirt, emblazoned with a GT500. My phone buzzed. It was a local number. Then I recalled it was already midday back home. My brothers had a habit of calling incessantly during the workday. Lori was blocked. My lawyer only contacted me once daily. I felt a tug on my sleeve. I turned around. No one was there. Then a voice spoke from behind me. That's impolite. I turned again. A diminutive woman stood there, barely reaching my chest. I stand 5 feet 10 inches. She couldn't have been more than 4 feet 11 inches tall. Curls the color of flame, freckles dusted across her nose, and vibrant green eyes. Are you contemplating a leap? She inquired casually. Absolutely not, I retorted. Why would you even pose such a question? Well, if you were, I desired your shirt, she stated matter-of-factly. No judgment. I've contemplated jumping myself. That's the most dreadful way to perish, I replied. It's akin to impacting solid concrete. Then you freeze, then you drown. Thanks for the motivational speech, she smirked. If I descend into despair again, I'll find a more suitable option. What would cause you to feel depressed? I inquired, genuinely curious. What do you mean, me? She asked, narrowing her eyes. If you're about to make a height-related joke, refrain from doing so. I didn't utter a single word about your stature, I said carefully. Then what? You simply seem cheerful, spirited, and quite pleasant. That's all I'm conveying, she laughed. I was apprehensive about revealing too much. I didn't want you to react aggressively. So, is this a conversation we're having? She inquired. Because if it is, you have two alternatives. Come inside and share breakfast with me, or surrender the shirt to me. I'm feeling cold. I smiled and extended my hand. She took it, small, warm, and possessing a quality I hadn't experienced in a considerable time. As soon as we stepped inside, we located a small dining establishment and ordered breakfast. She extended her hand again. Emily Anderson. Mark Brown, I replied, shaking it. Over pancakes and coffee, we exchanged life stories. She had married her high school sweetheart and spent 18 years with him until she returned home to discover him in bed with her cousin. It transpired that he resented her height, their inability to conceive children, and had fathered 2 children with her cousin. She divorced him and granted them her blessing to embark on a new life. The cruise ticket had been his prize from a radio competition. He presented it to her, and she utilized it to escape, uncertain of her life's trajectory, but desperate to feel liberated once more. When I recounted my narrative, she stared at me, astonished. Wow, what a scoundrel, she commented. By the time we concluded our meal, the sun was high in the sky. What are your plans for today? I asked. Likely catching a film, she smiled. And you? I was contemplating spending more time on deck. I realize we've just met, but I've genuinely enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate your vivacity. I like you too, Mark, she replied, but just a heads up, I am a redhead. I don't tan. I burn. Then let's find an indoor activity. I don't wish to postpone until sunset. She smiled, and just like that, I was captivated. For the remainder of the cruise, we were inseparable, with the exception of sleeping hours. We conversed about myriad subjects. I half-jokingly offered her employment, but what I recall most vividly is our final day. That was when we shared a kiss. I was aware it was inappropriate. I was still legally married, yet it felt profoundly right. Her lips were soft and tasted of cherries. The kiss quickly intensified, her arms encircling my neck, her legs entwined around my waist. To the bedroom, she growled between kisses. I don't adhere to the rules. I simply live by them. And so we did. We spent the entire day in my cabin. Later, after a brief nap, she curled up beside me, holding me close. That evening, we dressed, dined, and strolled the deck in comfortable silence, communicating volumes with mere glances. I've never engaged in this before, she remarked. You're a rapid learner, I quipped with a smile. She playfully punched my arm. I was married for 18 years, genius. I meant I've never experienced such intense passion. I felt desired, strong, as though I mattered. That sounds like a farewell, I observed quietly. It is not, she responded. However, I've been confined to a small town in Tennessee with a man who never truly perceived me. I aspire to travel. I desire more. That has been my lifelong aspiration. My heart sank. She had lifted me from despair in a mere week, only to depart. She raised her chin, awaiting a parting kiss. A tear traced a path down her cheek, and I hesitated. Was I truly this vulnerable? Was I on the verge of losing myself once more to a stranger? Was I destined to succumb to every flicker of affection? She didn't wait. She kissed me again, deeply and without apology. I wrapped my arms around her, drawing her nearer. Easy there, cowboy, she whispered. We won't be returning to the bedroom just yet, but you'll have another opportunity. She silenced me with a kiss. I'm not adept at goodbyes. Don't look for me in the morning. Simply remember me and continue living. She moved towards the closet, retrieved the t-shirt I had given her, taking this back, a small token of you to recall. Then she was gone. The following day was utter pandemonium. Airport clamor and a barrage of messages flooding my phone. My lawyer, my daughter, my brothers, all incensed. I had ceased all communication for a week. Upon returning home, I immediately returned to work. My brothers, who harbored mutual animosity, departed in silence. The elder one muttered, "He's an imbecile." Regarding the younger, who had informed me he would no longer cover for me and that I had better train a replacement. Later, my secretary provided me with a comprehensive update. While I was away, both brothers engaged in intimacy with our new receptionist, then turned against each other. She dismissed the receptionist, but the damage was irreversible. The office was in disarray, and now it appeared all three of us were heading towards singlehood, mirroring our father's fate. I contacted my lawyer. The judge expressed sympathy for my account, but refused to grant an annulment, deeming the circumstances too ambiguous for fraud. He would, however, approve a divorce if both parties consented to equitable terms. My lawyer and Lori's father negotiated for over a week without resolution. Her father clearly harbored the hope that she would sway my decision. Ultimately, Lori agreed to vacate the premises under a single condition, that I meet with her upon my return. I honored my commitment and visited her at Katie's residence. "I am here," I stated. "What did you wish to discuss?" "The same topic I always broach," she responded softly. "Us." For the ensuing 30 minutes, Lori presented every conceivable justification to legitimize years of infidelity. She alleged that I was overreacting, that I was merely experiencing jealousy. Why was it permissible for me to spend all my time with you when I was engaged to Todd, she argued, but not acceptable to spend a brief period with a dying man now that I am with you? This is about your ego, Mark. You could share me when I belong to him, but now you cannot bear to share anything. That is your true predicament. Then came her final plea. "Mark, I loved you both. Perhaps you treated me with greater consideration, but you possess the means to do so. I cannot abandon Todd now, not while he is unwell. He will likely not survive another 5 years. Our intimacy has dwindled to almost nothing," I offered a wry smile. "So the humor in his impotence amuses you now?" she retorted sharply. I offered a slow shake of my head. No, it just dawned on me. Cruz's intervention was precisely what I needed to achieve clarity. There was a time I believed our marriage was disintegrating because of my own inadequacies. I was convinced you were the only woman destined for me. Lori's brow furrowed. "And what revelation did you arrive at, that I was the sole participant in this endeavor?" I inquired. "I consistently made concessions, endured sacrifices, and clung to the fervent hope of repairing our union, yet your effort was non-existent. You neglected the single action that could have genuinely salvaged us." She narrowed her gaze. "Which action? You never severed ties with him. You continue to see him, still attempting to inhabit two separate realities." She fired back, echoing your behavior in college when you entertained the notion of his professional athletic career. I responded with a shrug. "That's perfectly acceptable. You are no longer required to make a choice." Her demeanor shifted, tinged with caution, yet holding a spark of hope. "What about the dissolution of our marriage?" "Let it go," I stated. "The legal expenditures are simply not worthwhile." Her face brightened considerably. "I knew you'd eventually see reason. I'm eager for your return home." "Convey that sentiment to Todd," I replied, my tone devoid of warmth. She made a move towards me. I stepped back. "What's amiss?" she inquired. I merely desire to kiss. Kiss Todd. Your reaction is quite absurd. I assure you, Lori, jealousy isn't a factor, I stated, my voice measured but distant. My concern has simply evaporated. Proceed as you wish, but renouncing the divorce does not signify my return. It doesn't imply we are reconciled. She froze, her lips slightly parted, rendered speechless. I've emerged victorious, I declared. I have successfully removed you from my residence. Now my sole objective is to locate an individual who genuinely brings me happiness and invite them to share my space. She remained motionless, utterly astounded. I extend my best wishes to you and Todd, I remarked, turning towards the exit. Inform him I extended my regards. As I departed, I noticed Eric positioned near the driveway. Eric, I called out, would you be amenable to joining my company? I require someone reliable, a person I can depend on when I need to take a respite. He appeared taken aback. Allow me some time to consider. Later that day, a torrent of voicemails began to inundate my phone. Lori's parents were incandescent with rage. Without a finalized decree of divorce, she was entitled to absolutely nothing. No financial provision, no access to assets, no alimony. At the venerable age of nearly 50, she was compelled to relocate back into their home, and her incessant weeping was pushing them to their limits. Todd was equally incensed. Lori's financial lifeline had completely vanished. She left a series of expletive-laden voicemails utilizing Katie's mobile device. Hers had been disconnected. Her credit cards were unceremoniously declined. The access points to the residence were reconfigured, and she finally grasped the most devastating aspect of my prior assertion. I had been referring to someone else entirely. In the ensuing days, my attention was solely directed towards my professional endeavors. Production was reinstated to its proper trajectory. I actively avoided locations where an encounter with Lori might occur. My paramount desire was tranquility. It was a Saturday evening. I was outside, meticulously washing my Mustang, when she materialized. Not Lori, but the other woman. She was attired in the sweatshirt she had absconded with 8 days prior. Now, you can wash mine, she suggested, a playful smile gracing her lips. I became momentarily paralyzed. You? How did you? You shared your entire life narrative with me, she explained, taking a deliberate step closer. Your business name, the town. It wasn't an arduous undertaking to locate you. You neglected to mention the Mustang, however. You were rather reticent as well, I observed. Why do you suppose I desired the T-shirt? She responded with a broad grin. I returned her smile, a flicker of uncertainty present. So, what brings you here? I'm not merely passing through, she declared, her voice now imbued with a softer cadence. I've decided to remain. I had assumed you wished to explore the world. As did I, she replied, until I departed for 6 hours and was struck by the realization that I had made an error. My thoughts were in a constant state of internal conflict. I considered the possibility that it might be too soon. I had only recently extricated myself from a protracted and disheartening marital entanglement. However, I was then reminded of the profound sense of contentment you instilled in me within a single week, a feeling far superior to any I had experienced in 18 years. That, I concluded, was a sentiment worth staying for. By then, she had drawn near, her body gently pressing against mine. And then another internal debate ensued, she continued. You never articulated your love for me, nor expressed a desire for a deeper connection, merely remarking that I was quite pleasant. Yet I perceived it in your eyes. You did not wish for me to depart. She encircled me with her arms, drawing me into an embrace. "I have a vacancy for a receptionist," I jested, my voice barely audible above her ear. She pressed her lips to mine. Cherry once more. "You cannot have it," I whispered. "Why not?" she inquired, her eyes alight with amusement. "If I were to gaze upon you all day, I would never accomplish a single task." "Well then, perhaps I should depart again," she teased. "If you attempt that, we will encounter a predicament," I cautioned, my tone playful. "I do not engage with predicaments," she murmured, holding me more closely. "I must disclose something to you," I stated. "I am already aware." "No, Emily, this is significant." She looked up, her expression transforming into one of earnestness. "I am sincere about you as well. I simply did not fully comprehend it until I left. I rescinded the divorce proceedings," I said quietly. Her eyes widened in surprise. She took a slight step back and sat upon the damp hood of my car. "After all she inflicted upon you," the judge refused to consider the allegations of fraud, I explained. "He indicated he would approve the divorce if we reached a financial settlement, but engaging her in a protracted legal battle was simply no longer justifiable. Then simply present her with a check," she suggested. "Life is too ephemeral." "Precisely," I concurred, and then recounted Lori's legal machinations, detailing how I had opted to forego the confrontation, relinquish the house, and abandon the entire affair. "So she no longer resides with you?" Emily inquired. "No," I confirmed. "You do from this point forward." Her voice softened with emotion. "Are you making this decision because you still harbor affections for her?" I'd completely forgotten about her the moment I encountered you. Emily smiled, and that was all the reassurance she required. "That is precisely what I needed to hear," she replied. From that juncture forward, Emily and I resumed our connection from where it had begun on the ship and never looked back. She even made occasional visits to the factory when she missed me, which was a frequent occurrence. My secretary developed an immediate fondness for her. Eric, who had accepted the position, found her agreeable as well.